everybody, to another edition of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with me. Not only another edition, but an award edition, a holiday edition. We're breaking out another end-of-year awards episode for the Georgia Bulldogs. Trying to figure out what we're going to call this, guys. I was thinking, do we call our awards? Are they the Junkies? Can we go in that area with the trophy?
That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Going with the Junkies to hand out to several Georgia Bulldogs. If you're listening to this, we are recording this about a week ahead of time as we are getting ready for the holiday season. So as we go through these, if we don't talk about someone who's gone in the portal, if there's someone who's hurt that you're like, why are they not mentioning that? We're recording this a little bit ahead of time just to give you guys more content to talk about during the holiday season, have another episode to listen to. And we've done this, I think this is the third year that we have given out these awards. So super excited to do this episode. But first, I want to start this episode by going through some of our over-unders from, I think, August. And I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think all three of us guys did a really good job with the over-unders that we set and then what our predictions were. Going through it, each of us hit 12. So nobody, had a really poor performance compared to the rest of us. Wanted to go through them real quick. We had several for Gunner Stockton. Over-under was 3,500 passing yards. That number wound up being under. He threw for 2,535 yards in the regular season. All three of us predicted he would hit the under, so we were all in the right there.
Bad Vegas number on that one, whoever set that one.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That the first one, Ben, wound up being the worst one. Most of them were pretty much in line, which I was pleased with as Vegas in this specific situation.
I wasn't going to say you were Vegas. I just was saying whoever Vegas was.
Fair enough. 23.5 passing touchdowns was the number. That wound up being under. Again, these numbers are all just for the regular season, so we took away what happened in the SEC title game. That those numbers did not they were not included. The under hit, he threw for 20 passing touchdowns in the regular season. None of us hit that one. We all went over there. 9.5 interceptions, the under hit, and pretty comfortably with only 5 interceptions in the regular season. Kipp and Ben hit that one. And as we go through these, I wanted to shout out the instances where one of our co-hosts said, really drove home the point and wound up looking really smart. And Ben, on this one, pretty comfortably under is what he said. He had it at 6 or 7, so Gunner only throws 5 interceptions in the regular season. Leading rusher, we all had Nate Frazier. Pretty easy one. I don't know that we deserve a ton of credit there. But we also all went over on what was 750 rushing yards in the regular season. Nate Frazier went over and had 809. So we all looked good there. Leading receiver, we all had Zachariah Branch. And I was the only one who was right on this one. The over-under was 850 receiving yards in the regular season. I went under, and it was kind of comfortably, 691. This was one that, it's funny going back to these, I kind of have in my head what I thought I predicted, and I thought I went over on that one just because of how positively we talked about Zachariah Branch. Still had a really good season, but he winds up going under there. All right, flipping over to the defense, over under 65 tackles for the leading tackler in the regular season. We all went over that it would be over 65, and we all went with C.J. Allen. And Ben said well over 65, and that number was correct. He had 80 in the regular season, which is wild when you think about he missed a game and a half. So what he could have had if he played in the second half against Texas and if he had played against Charlotte. Sacks, I was the only one to pick Chris Cole, which that was one, going back and listening, I was a little bit surprised by. And I was me and Ben, I should say, went under on 4.5 sacks. Which was what wound up happening. He had 4, and this was the one where I said probably 4 sacks on the season, in the regular season. That's probably what's going to lead the team. So that's the one time I can kind of shout out what I was able to do there. None of us hit on C.J. Allen as a tackle for loss leader. He winds up leading the team with 8, and we went over on the 7.5 over under wound up going over with 8 tackles for loss. None of us had it going over, so they surprised us there with the number of tackles for loss. All right, the interception leaders, Ben wound up hitting with Ellis Robinson. He was the only one. He called it his shocker of the episode in that over-under episode. Quote, I think he is the best on-ball playmaker that Georgia has in the secondary. And Ben, as much as we all kind of split how well we all did, I think Ben winds up looking the best in this. We all went over 2.5 interceptions for the team leader, and it wound up being 4 with Ellis Robinson in the regular season. Special teams, we all went over 0.5 special teams touchdowns for Zachariah Branch. That did not hit, never had a touchdown. That's honestly, to me, one of the more surprising ones that we did that we were wrong about. I thought, Marshall, Austin P., Charlotte, that there would be an opportunity there. Did not happen for Zachariah Branch. Maybe it'll happen in the postseason. Going to other parts of special teams, Peyton Woodring, we set the over-under on his field goals at 90.0%. We all hit it. We all went over. And, man, 15 to 16, 93.8. Didn't kick as many field goals as last year, but very accurate with the only miss coming against Auburn on the road. Elsewhere, Brett Thorson, we had the over-under 45.0 yards per punt. This might have been my best line. It hit at 45.2. So it was right there. And I did not get that one. Ben and Kipp both got the over for Brett Thorson. All right, regular season win total.
I'll give you the win on that one, though, Jordan. For setting that line as good as you did, I'll give you the win on that one.
Hey, as much as I am flying blind when I set these and doing my best, I was pretty pleased. The passing
coming
yards,
off an injury for Brett Thorson, that's an impressive line. Like, you might have if this writing thing doesn't work out, you might have a trip to Vegas in your future.
I might give myself an honorary junkie for the way I said these. All right, for the regular season win total, over under, I said it was 10.5. Kipp and I went over, and that hit with 11. Offensive points per game, I set the over-under at 34.5, and it ended up under at 32.3. None of us had it going under. And this is where I need to shout out Kipp for the defensive points per game. I set it at 17.5. The under hit at 16.7. Kipp was the only one of us three to hit the under, to take the under there. And Kipp said it's probably going to be something like 16.4. So that was pretty impressive, Kipp. You had a good read on what this defense was going to wind up doing. Like I mentioned earlier, 12 hits for me, 12 for Ben, and 12 for Kipp. None of us could separate ourselves from the pack, but I think that just shows you great minds think alike here on the Junkyard Dawgcast.
No, well, it's funny listening back to some of those, because some of the ones I got right, I didn't remember what I picked over under on some of these things. So I'm glad that you sort of went back and retold it, because there were some that I got correct that when you started to call them out, I was like, oh, I'm sure I went over on that. And then you're like, no, you went under and it was right. And I was like, oh, I would not have thought that I would have been thinking that way. Like the Zachariah Branch one is one where I'm surprised that I went over on the receiving yards for Zachariah Branch, just with as many weapons as they had. But I guess that's just what the buzz was around Zachariah Branch. And it wasn't misplaced buzz. It just hasn't resulted in yardage total the way that I maybe would have thought it was. But yeah, no, that was a good recount.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with how all three of us fared there. And like you said, there's some. I was surprised I was the only one who picked Chris Cole to lead the team in sacks, but it's just one of those things that we've done a few episodes since then. It's hard to remember who picked what.
The least surprising thing you said was that I described something that I did as the shocker of the episode, as if it was some just hammer dropping that everyone listening was supposed to be captivated by. So that was probably my biggest takeaway from your initial. So for anyone that had to listen to that back in August, I apologize in retrospect.
But you wound up being right, so there was something.
Well, yeah, but I prefer it. When I get to remind people that I'm right. When you remind people that I'm right, Jordan, then I just got to be like, well, I was kind of the asshole there. So
fair enough. All right, going into the accolades, going into our end of year awards, we're going to go through and give some superlatives, give out some awards for the Bulldogs that we think have really stepped up, really come through for the team throughout this year. But I want to start with what has been one of the games or one of the things we've always done when we handed out the awards. And I'm going to put you guys on the spot and ask you to give me one word to describe the 2025 season for the Georgia Bulldogs. I'll start with you, Ben. What word comes to mind when you think about what Georgia has done through 13 games?
I am going to use a word that I think I probably would have used about Alabama a long time ago, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to say inevitable. And I think that what Georgia has proven this year is that no matter where they have deficiencies, no matter where things aren't going perfectly, no matter how the sport might be growing closer together with the, ever growing use of the word parity, Georgia still is the inevitability in the SEC right now. Like, they've won 3 out of the last 4 SEC championships. The one that they didn't win, they went 12-0. They lost by 3 to Alabama, and then they went and won 66-3 against an undefeated ACC champion. So the last 4 years, albeit not perfect, and everybody seems to constantly yearn for 2021 and how perfect everything seemed throughout the regular season in 2021, and then 2022, like the dominance that second half of the season in 2022, everyone yearns for that. And while you might not feel that, there is a certain inevitability about Georgia right now. And I don't know that that means you're going to win the national championship this year, or that you're going to win the national championship every year, or that you're entitled to win the national championship ever again just because you did in 21 and 22. But in terms of Georgia being there, in terms of Georgia being the team to beat in the Southeastern Conference, Georgia is inevitable. And I think that they've reached that status in college football.
The word that comes to mind for me is patience. And I think it's really comparing the first half of the season to the second half because, as someone who covers this team and you try to be unbiased and you try to diagnose what you're seeing in real time, I think about early in the year, I was like, I don't know if this Gunnar Stockton thing's going to work. I think about week 2 in the Austin Peay game. He just didn't look sharp, and the offense just kind of, they get on the goal line and can't score, and it's just a terrible play before half where Ethan Barbour gets hurt, and you're just sort of like, man, what is this? And you can even look at it on other phases of the team. I think about the secondary coming out of the game where, I became a believer in Gunnar Stockton in that Tennessee game, but we were like, whew, that secondary, they might be in trouble, just getting stops. And you even saw that later in the year in that Ole Miss game where Ole Miss has 5 straight touchdowns. There was so many pieces early in this year where you just kind of go, I don't know, like, is this really going to work? They can't get to the quarterback, like all this stuff. And I think that patience has really paid off with this team. You've seen down the stretch. I really do think they've hit their stride. There are some injuries that are going to be things we have to consider when we start looking at the playoff and what they're able to do. But I think that they've found a good spot. The secondary, I think, is really thriving. We've seen the pass rush come along. I keep thinking about the game at Mississippi State where it just felt like that run game finally was like, all right, we are really here. And they'd had some strong performances early in the year, but that was the one where it was like they have the potential with this offensive line to be very, very productive on a weekly basis. So patience is my word. I think it's one where there's been times, especially early in the season, where you went, I don't know if this team is championship caliber, but they all stuck together. Kirby always said the right things about, having the confidence in those guys, and they've come through, and now they're very much in the hunt for the championship. All right, Kipp, what is your word to describe the Georgia season at this point?
I think when I'm looking at the totality of what Georgia's done this season, knowing that the playoff is just chaos, there's too many variables involved. That's how playoff systems work. We see it in pro sports. Like, anything can happen. It's too volatile. But knowing that they have accomplished, all the goals that they set out going into the season, my word for this Georgia team is accountable. You look at last year's team and the way that season ended, and overall just thinking about all offseason, like, I guess that bitter taste in the mouth that you kind of felt through the fan base, to the coaching staff. You could see when you talk to the players, you could tell, like, that just left a really, really bad memory. But overall, for that season, we were talking about what happened to the run game? Why can't Georgia stop the run anymore? And I look at this team, and they had that mission. Like, we held ourselves accountable. Last year wasn't up to the standard. And the one thing you could say about this team going into the playoff is they look like they did during the championship run, stopping the run. And they're running the ball again as well as they have. I mean, I'm not going to say as well as they ever have under Kirby, but it's a hell of a lot better than when you had your worst rushing season of the 21st century. Like, I think that's, you look at that and you see what they're doing now, and they haven't loaded up on like NFL talent based on last year. Like the offensive line, I mean, we talked about it. They sent 3 basically starters to the NFL on the offensive line. They had a very talented running back in Travis and Etienne. Like they had talent. That wasn't really the issue. And so I think holding themselves accountable and knowing they didn't play up to that standard, and now the fact that their defense, we're looking at it and we're talking about this is a Kirby Smart defense, when the narrative going in and early in the season was, well, there's not a lot of first-round talent on this defense. And, that might be true. But at the same time, that they're not worried about that. They're playing up to the standard that Kirby Smart set to them, up the standard. I think the leadership on this team has taken a step up and made sure that they play up to the standard. And I think that's really the accountability, being accountable. This team, there's a difference. And I think it speaks to the players in that locker room and how they have established their own, just again, like I said, their own standard of playing Georgia football.
All right, let's get into the awards, and let's start with Offensive MVP. And I'll throw it back to you, Kipp. Who is your Offensive MVP for Georgia so far this season?
I'm going to be honest, and it's going to come to a shock as no one. I'm not going to overthink any of these awards. My Offensive MVP, drum roll, it's Gunnar Stockton. We're talking about, again, a guy who finished 7th in the Heisman voting in his first season as a starter, a finalist for Manning Award, was a semifinalist for Maxwell, Walter Camp, Davey O'Brien, basically all the awards that nobody had him in a running for going into the season. I mean, we're talking about a guy who wasn't in the top 10 in a lot of SEC quarterback rankings, still somehow didn't make, first or second team all SEC in a lot of award lists, but it led Georgia to a first round bye in the college football playoff. Epitomizes what I said before as far as accountability in that locker room. All year long, all offseason long, you had players just talking about like they believe in Gunnar Stockton. They have no doubt in him. He had the team from day one, and he backed it up by completing 70% of his passes, not turning the ball over. The toughness that he showed out there. He got over 400 rushing yards, but I think none of those, those were all earned. Every single yard he got came through contact. And I just think that the fact that we know he played through injury, had some oblique injury. Georgia recently had some issues with quarterbacks with oblique injuries. There's just a difference. And I'm not going to say toughness, but he just went out there and you never heard it and you never knew about it. And his personality, just being quiet and consistent and letting the preparation kind of inspire everyone. I think everything they've done offensively has been through him. And I think he is a dynamic threat going into the playoffs. And that's all you can really ask for, and probably more than what anyone expected from Gunnar Stockton this season.
Sticking with Kipp on this one, also going with Gunnar Stockton, just wanted to read some of the statistics. 70.7% completion percentage, 2,691 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's also rushed for 442 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'm glad, too, that Kipp pointed out, him playing through the pain, playing through injury, and not letting it slow him down. Now, I'm trying to remember, I think that might have been the Ole Miss week that Kirby was like, yeah, he didn't really practice a ton because he'd been so banged up. And I think it's something I kind of took for granted going into like the Tech game, the SEC championship game. that he's not 100%. And I think that kind of explains some of how he played, but also didn't stop him from laying his body on the line, fighting for extra yards. This offense and really this entire team to me goes as Gunner goes, and that's why they're in the position they're in. And I'm very interested to see how he shows up in the Sugar Bowl with additional rest and time to kind of regroup. Let's see what he's able to do there. Ben, are you sticking with us, or do you have a different offensive MVP?
Well, unlike Kipp, you shouldn't be surprised. Of course, I'm going to overthink all of these. And so for the offensive MVP award, I'm not even going to go with a player. I'm going with offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. I think that, look, I hear you. Y'all made the right choice. If we're just saying, if we're just like looking at things by the book, you guys made the right choice. I mean, you have a quarterback, like Kipp said, 7th in the Heisman. Jordan just laid out statistically what he's done this year, and I don't even think that even paints the full picture of what he's brought to this Georgia football team. I still think, look, how many rotations Georgia had to go through on the offensive line, some of the injuries and fumble issues that they've dealt with at running back, the injuries that they've dealt with at receiver, losing Colby Young and then Noah Thomas and then Talon Taylor. And you lose Ethan Barbour, who's clearly going to be a key feature of your offense early on in the season. And while Gunnar Stockton has been sensational and deserves that MVP recognition that you all just gave him, he still has offensive limitations. There are still things that as an offensive coordinator, you have to build a plan around what his style of play is, what he excels at. And I think that Mike Bobo, as well as any time that we've seen a Georgia offensive coordinator, at least since I would say 2022 with Monken, where they just use all of their weapons exactly the right way. And it just feels like Zachariah Branch is always getting used exactly the right way. Nate Frazier has come on in a way in the second half of the season when people were clamoring for more and more Chauncey Bowens, deservedly so. But Nate Frazier has proven why they are using him and why they're putting him in certain situations, whether it was London Humphreys or Dylan Bell or Noah Thomas or Colby Young or Oscar Delp or Lawson Lucky. They have found creative ways to be able to use them. I think that Mike Bobo deserves his flowers for that, given all of the conversations that have been happening with him. I find it interesting that I'm giving him this, knowing that we all went over on the points per game that Georgia would score, and Georgia ended up going under. So they actually underperformed what our expectations were at the beginning of the season, technically. But in terms of how things went along the way, they far exceeded what I think they probably should have been capable of along the way. I think that they have overachieved at times offensively, and I think that Mike Bobo deserves the credit for that. So I'm going to make him the MVP, even though he's not a player.
Did want to shout out that Mike Bobo is one of the finalists for the Broyles Award, and as I think we pointed out on one of the most recent episodes, the only offensive coach. So does that make him the top offensive assistant?
Best offensive mind in college football is what they're saying.
At least among the assistants. Let's at least
among assistant coaches, fair.
All right, defensive MVP. I'll start with this one, and I would kind of be surprised if we don't all agree on this one. It's C.J. Allen. For me, I think that C.J.'s been fantastic this season. 85 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. He leads the team in tackles and tackles for loss, and he's half a sack off of the sack lead. Also, 4 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles. One of the biggest plays of the year was his forced fumble against Auburn on the goal line in the second quarter of that game. And I think very much like Gunner on offense, I think this defense goes as C.J. Allen goes. And I think that you could kind of see that this defense was going to play inspired when he was out, as I mentioned earlier, the second half of Texas, the Charlotte game. And this dude was driven to be back for that Georgia Tech game. He understands that, more than likely that's going to be the last time he plays Georgia Tech. He wanted to be a part of that game. He wanted to be out there with his teammates. You could tell I didn't think he was quite 100% in that game, but he still had 2 tackles. And I thought he looked much more like himself in the SEC title game. 5 tackles, played really well on defense, a defense that was just unrelenting against the Crimson Tide. So I'm going with C.J. Allen. He's my defensive MVP. And, I thought when we did this midseason, we were all kind of trying to search for who we thought was actually the defensive MVP. And I think I sort of settled, I guess it's C.J. Allen. I kind of say it more wholeheartedly. I feel like CJ's the defensive MVP. He's been such a big part of what this defense has accomplished this year. I'll throw it to you, Ben. Who is your defensive MVP?
Yep, not overthinking this one. I think it's clear. Well, I don't want to speak for Kipp, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think it's pretty clearly CJ Allen. I mean, not to, again, this is going back to what I said earlier, Jordan. I prefer it when I get to pat myself on the back rather than you pat me on the back. There was a reason why when we did our team drafts, I went 1-1 CJ Allen, because I thought that he was very clearly that guy for the defense this season. Like, if you were going to look for leadership answers and been there, done that answers, like, CJ Allen was the person that you were going to lean on. I think that's why he got the All-American honors that he got. It's why he got the All-SEC honors that he got when a lot of other people on this team didn't. And look, for us to, again, not assuming anything with Kipp, but for us to probably consensusly have CJ Allen as the MVP on the defense when he missed time tells you everything that you need to know about what he brought to this defense this season. Because typically when you're handing out these type of accolades at the end of a season, you're saying, all right, there's 12 game sample, 13 game sample. You didn't play in a couple of them. It's hard to give that guy that recognition. I don't think there's really any question in my mind who that belongs to.
All right, Kipp, do you want to ruin Ben's really well laid out explanation there, or are you going with us on CJ Allen?
I mean, I kind of feel like now I'm required to say, shouldn't
I just peer pressure.
Should it be Glenn Schumann? I mean, like, if we're talking, which side of the football is actually playing better for Georgia right now? I think when they talked about like who the best assistant in college football was, we just post this on the Junkyard and just let the Flames take over the site. But which side of the football has played better over the course of the season? Which side of the football is actually like clearly improved and maybe elite going in the college football playoff? I think it's the defense. But aside from that, yeah, it's CJ Allen. I'm still going with CJ Allen because I said that on the midseason, that he was the heart and soul of this defense. And that, again, he's just played such a crucial role, which that position it just does under Glenn Schumann. You know, like, as long as Glenn Schumann's at Georgia, they're going to have elite inside linebacker play, and they're going to have Buckus Award semifinalists, finalists, and winners. That's all he's done. And the fact that it's hard to know where you put him, CJ Allen, in the Georgia rankings is a credit to Glenn Schumann. But he's pretty far up there. I mean, like, if we're saying he's, just below Nakobe Dean, but, ahead of like Monty Rice or something like that, that's an outstanding place to be at. And again, he's gotten better. Like, he was always this like vocal, emotional leader. He always tried to set the tone. He's always been a very solid tackler, and leading the team in tackles, missing a game and a half shows you that. But I think this year the instincts started to kick in. He was getting to the football faster. He was taking better angles to the football, him and Raylan Wilson both. But they both grew in that area. And instead of talking about like just leaked yardage or explosives, like, you just saw that, he was getting to the football behind the line of scrimmage and making plays downhill. And that just opened up everything for this Georgia defense. So I think, this defense knows that its leader is CJ. It's been its leader for a long time. We talked about CJ before he'd actually started classes at Georgia. It's crazy to think about the fact that just remembering Kirby talking about him after the win over TCU and the role he played. And here he is. An incredible time at Georgia. If this is his last hurrah, he's been outstanding from start to finish. And I think he can be proud of himself for the way he carried himself at Georgia, and the play on the field has been outstanding throughout his time.
What Kipp mentioned right there with like, it's hard to know where to put CJ in the lore of Georgia football players. There was a clip I was watching SEC Inside that the SEC Network puts out on the SEC Championship game, and I think it was after the Jeremy Bernard touchdown where they missed a couple of tackles and Georgia's up 21-7. There's a clip of CJ. He goes to the sideline and he is pissed and he is screaming, "That is not Georgia football. That is not Georgia football." And I think the reason why I wanted to tie that in with what Kipp was saying about where he stands in Georgia lore is I think from like a mental edge standpoint and his understanding of what it means to be a Georgia football player and what Georgia football means, CJ's got to be right up there with everyone. Like, I mean, this is a guy that should not have probably been playing in the Georgia Tech game, but he wanted to play in the Georgia Tech game because it was the Georgia Tech game. And there's a lot of linebackers that have come through Georgia that would not value the importance of a Georgia Tech game the way that CJ Allen does because of just his innate understanding of Georgia football, being from there, his, you know, what matters to him. And like, I think that part of CJ Allen, one, is going to be huge for Georgia in these last however many games that they're able to play. But two, probably the underrated part of what he brings and what he's been able to contribute to Georgia since he was a freshman. I mean, he's been that guy for a long, long time.
I'll just never forget doing the Future Dog Watch when he was a senior in high school and getting the stats from Lamar County, and he was playing both ways then. And I was like, this can't be right. I mean, he was really – the numbers were more impressive at running back. He was just running over teams. So he's been a pleasure to watch these last few years. I think you'll see him make some big plays during this playoff run. All right, offensive breakthrough player. And I'll explain this, guys. I would prefer we not pick a freshman here. I'd like this to be someone who is has been in the program for a little bit and has taken a step forward with their game. So throwing that out there, Kipp, who is your offensive breakthrough player this year?
Chauncey Bowens. Just a guy that we didn't really know what the pecking order was going to be at running back behind Nate Frazier going into this season, but we didn't exactly have Chauncey Bowens at the top of the list. We had heard that he had a strong fall camp, and I think at running back, you know, maybe that's where we need to kind of listen to those fall camp whispers because that was the same thing we heard about Nate Frazier last year. You know, we heard it with Bo Walker as well. I think the numbers made it hard. It's kind of similar to wide receiver. Like you never really know who's going to lead Georgia in receiving every game because they just have depth there. Well, the running back room, I mean, they had like 8 scholarship players there. So it was just, that was tough. But the hype was real. Like he took that fall camp performance and, you know, parlayed it into a huge role for Georgia's offense and gave them kind of a 1-2 punch. And even more so, I mean, like even in the loss to Alabama, I mean, when Nate Frazier had the fumble, like Chauncey had his breakthrough performance in a loss. He ran for 119 yards in Alabama. And I mean, I just remember like there was a time when nobody ran for 100 yards in Alabama. Like it was just something that you just never did, kind of like Georgia. And he led the team in rushing a couple other times this season. He ended up, you know, over 500 yards and like 6 touchdowns. I think he's given them an assurance that regardless of like the rotation or how many touches that they were still going to get really good running back play and stabilize that room when it was anything but stable during the middle portion of that season. And so I think, you know, now going into the playoff, even going into next year, you kind of know like, okay, Georgia's got a couple guys out there that if one's banged up or regardless, they're going to be fine in the running game.
Chauncey Bowens, 98 carries for 516 yards and 6 touchdowns so far this season. He has been really, really strong this year. Ben, who is your pick for offensive breakthrough player?
Well, because of how I answered the offensive MVP thing, I'm actually going to answer this one a little bit differently and similarly to how you all answered the offensive MVP one. And look, Gunnar Stockton was not a sure thing. I have shared my doubts publicly. I probably even shared more doubts privately in terms of what I thought he was going to be capable of. If we're just calling it like it is, Georgia tried to bring in Jaden Mayavar over the top of him 2 years ago. They recruited Fernando Mendoza out of the transfer portal this most recent season. Like, I'm not saying Georgia didn't believe in Gunnar Stockton, but Georgia showed every sign that they were going to make Gunnar Stockton work, basically take the Stetson Bennett path of you have to prove beyond any other doubt that you are the guy to be the quarterback of this team for the 2026 season. And that predates this offseason. Like I'm talking about, we're looking back 1, 2, 3 years, and Georgia is forecasting what the quarterback room is going to look like for the 2025 football season. Like Gunnar Stockton was not always a sure thing to be that guy. And he has been so reliable this season that you all both rightfully so had him as the offensive MVP. And I think now that he's done it, it's very easy to say we all kind of knew because of what Georgia's quarterback room was that he was going to be the quarterback this year, which we did. We knew that once we got to a point where it was him, Ryan Montgomery, Ryan Puglisi, Hezekiah Millender, Coulter again, we knew it was going to be Gunnar Stockton that was going to be the quarterback. But just because we knew that he was going to be the starting quarterback did not mean that we knew that he was going to perform to the level that he did. I don't think that this Georgia football team would be what it was able to be today if Gunnar Stockton hadn't not just taken a big step in the offseason, but taken steps along the way throughout the year. I think he didn't just break through this season. He broke through as times progressed throughout the course of the season. And look, he broke through what my expectations of him were. And sort of why I gave Mike Bobo the nod for MVP is that I just think the way that Georgia found how to be able to use what Gunnar Stockton does well was genius this year. And they proved me wrong in terms of you don't have to be perfect at certain things. If you know what your personnel is and you know that it's good enough to win with, it's how you utilize that personnel. And sometimes utilizing that personnel to the best of its ability is better than using some other personnel that might theoretically be better. Like I sort of assumed that Georgia had from a passing skeleton standpoint with Carson Beck the last 2 years. I think that Gunnar Stockton, in the confines of what Mike Bobo was able to do with him this year, was better than what Georgia's had at quarterback for several years now. And I think that that's a testament to both Mike Bobo, but especially Gunnar Stockton.
I'm going to spread the love here with the offensive breakthrough player, and it's a guy that unfortunately I don't think we're going to see again this season, and it's Drew Bobo. I think that he's a guy that, even going back to when Georgia offered him, he had been committed to Auburn when Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator. Mike gets fired. He comes to Georgia as an analyst, and then Drew winds up here, and I'm sure people are still, bumping the old message board posts of Drew committing to Georgia and, this is nepotism. What are they doing giving this guy an offer? And Drew's always been a guy I've rooted for. I got to cover his senior year at Auburn High because I was still at the Opelika Auburn News, and he was really good that season, and he's done a great job of just putting his head down and grinding. And, last year Jared Wilson gets hurt. I think he missed a couple of games. Drew comes in, and there was talk behind the scenes of, we kind of feel like our communication up front was better with Drew. Like, this guy's got something to his game. So I felt really confident when Jared Wilson went pro. All right, they're going to turn to Drew Bobo. And he did such a great job when he was playing this season. He gets hurt. I think that was the Texas game he gets hurt. No, it was Mississippi State, late in the game against Mississippi State. And they talked about it on the broadcast that like his hand got caught in like a shoulder pad, and that caused the cut that winds up, he leaves that game. He toughs it out against Texas. He deserves so much credit for that. Sits out Charlotte, is back for the Georgia Tech game and gets hurts his foot. Doesn't sound like he's going to play again this season, but the job he did, I think it goes in conjunction with Gunnar Stockton. Those two guys being on the same page, making sure that they understand what they were looking like, what they were looking at every single play. Drew being reliable, Drew being good pre-snap and being just as good post-snap. I think Drew deserves a lot of credit. It's a shame that it looks like his season has ended, but my expectation is he'll be back in 2026 with Gunnar, and there'll be key pieces on an offense that will look significantly different than this one that's trying to win a championship. All right, defensive breakthrough player. I'll throw it to you, Ben. Who is your choice for the Bulldogs?
I'm going to go with the guy that I previously predicted to lead the team in interceptions. Not only did he break through this season, he broke through from some early season perceptions that there were about him. I mean, he really got bullied a little bit in Knoxville at the beginning of the season. I think there were enough questions, and I think this is a silver lining at this point, but there were enough questions about Ellis Robinson around that week 3 to 5 mark that DeMello Jones started getting a lot more serious run. And again, I think that that's a silver lining for Georgia because I think that DeMello Jones got squeezed into the rotation a little bit more because of Ellis Robinson's struggles. And then Ellis Robinson started to come on, and now he's really in the best form of himself right now. And DeMello Jones has now gotten a lot of reps to go along with that. And those will probably be the guys moving forward. And so Ellis, it doesn't surprise me. Obviously, he's a great playmaker on the ball. He has fantastic ball skills. He's uber competitive. And I think that competitiveness is what got him to this point this season, because there's a lot of guys that would have done what he did in Knoxville and tucked their tail between their legs, been a shell of themselves for the rest of the season. And I think the exact opposite's happened with Ellis Robinson. I think he's been able to take some of that early season abuse that he took and turn it into, all right, this is where I can improve. This is where I can be more comfortable. And you see now, guys are taking shots. And look, I'm sure there people are watching early season film of Georgia and they're saying, oh, there might be an opportunity there. Take a shot on one. You get into a one-on-one situation. You better have brushed up on your recent film, because if you're relying on old film of Ellis Robinson, you're going to take that shot and he's going to look like the wide receiver on the play, not your wide receiver. And so I think that's a risk that teams are still potentially going to try and take down the stretch. So maybe even another silver lining, the fact that there's Ellis Robinson film out there that will make people think you can take a shot on him in a one-on-one. Good luck, because I like his chances against most wide receivers right now.
I'm just going to believe he's playing like Ed Reed mind games, knowing like, hey, we'll probably make a playoff run, so I'll give up some of these plays. That did not happen, but I'm just going to pretend that it did. That's also my pick, Ben. I'm picking Ellis Robinson. 4 interceptions leads the team, 17 tackles, half a tackle for loss, I should say, and 7 pass breakups. Still upset that he was not selected to the SEC All-Freshman team, but we've kind of covered that the team makes no sense. I mean, Raylan Wilson got it over C.J. Allen their freshman year, and, I mean, there was no justification in it happening that way. But Ellis has been great. And, again, he's part of a secondary that I think it's one of the units you feel best about with this Georgia team going into the playoffs, just what they've accomplished, the confidence they have. And Ellis is a big part of that, and his emergence has been huge. Kipp, do you agree with us, or are you going with someone else for a defensive breakthrough?
I mean, I've been coin flipping the whole time because I knew that regardless, it was going to be a guy that was kind of maybe not a full-time starter, but like the third guy. It really just came down to 2 guys. So I'll go contrarian just to spread the love, and I'll go with Chris Cole. Just a guy that we knew had a lot of potential coming into the season. And he started off the season with a tackle for loss in 4 straight games. He also had a sack in 3 straight games after the Marshall game. And he's also currently having he's been involved in a tackle for loss for 4 consecutive games going into the playoff. And that's just an aspect of Georgia's defense that we talked about all season long. Like, where are these havoc plays coming from on defense? And it still isn't like a huge team strength, but down the stretch of the season, once these guys got enough snaps in them, they started making plays in the backfield. They started making quarterbacks get the ball out earlier. And yeah, I think a big reason that Ellis has been able to enjoy leading the team in interceptions is because a lot of these errant throws his way from quarterbacks who had to get the ball out because a guy like Chris Cole was in their face. And it's still kind of in that early Jalen Walker stage where it's like, are they using them the best way? Are they using him enough? He's one of those several guys that Georgia has, which is a great thing. We're like, how are you going to get this guy enough snaps? How are you going to use him? Are you going to put him at edge? Like, how are you going to work him in there with so many talented guys at both position rooms? But he's still the guy is fourth on the team in tackles, leading the team in sacks with 4.5, and just behind C.J. Allen in tackles for loss. I just think that, he's growing into the player we kind of thought he would be. Every time you kind of just see him in warmups, you're just like, okay, this guy's ridiculous, just even in that position room. But I think that his role is expanded to one to where opponents have to game plan for him. They have to know where he is on the field when he's on the field. And I think it just says a lot to his overall talent level and the fact that he's played at a high level for most of the season.
Going to transfer of the year, I will be very surprised if this is not a consensus. I'm going with Zachariah Branch. We're going with just transfers from this past offseason. So I'm going Zachariah Branch, 73 receptions, 744 yards, 5 touchdowns. As we covered in the over-unders, he has not had a special teams touchdown, but he's made some big plays. I believe that was the SEC title game. He had a big return that set up Georgia really well. He's a guy that was huge even before Colby Young got hurt, but given that, I think that, once Colby got hurt, it was clear. Zachariah Branch was the number one guy. He was the guy in crunch time they were going to get the ball to, and he's just been so reliable. And SEC title game, man, was a great example of getting him the ball and just letting him make a play. They throw a screen to him, he cuts on a dime, and he's off to the races. And what I felt like was really the game-sealing touchdown in that 28-7 win over Alabama. Throw it to you, Kipp. Who is your transfer of the year for Georgia?
I mean, for a second I thought about someone else, and I still might mention this player in a later award, but I don't know where this Georgia team would be without Zachariah Branch. And I honestly, of all the transfer portal wins Georgia's had over the years, I mean, he's up there. And how quickly did he become he's probably the fan favorite right now. And in the transfer portal era, when fans are just like, I can't really lock into any of these guys because I'm only going to have them for a year. Georgia fans have embraced Zachariah Branch because they just know how much he's meant to this team and the fact that he is an extension of the run game. Like they just throw it to him in traffic, like double-digit times a game, and they're like, "Here, just make something happen, Zachariah," and he does almost every time. Like he's gonna probably get drafted in the first 40 or 50 picks. And he's just making plays at the line of scrimmage. Like it just says a lot about his mentality. He knows going in, I'm not going to get some like wide open 45 yards down the field deep ball. If I'm getting 45 yards down the field, it's because I made 5 defenders miss on my way there. It requires a bunch of blocking to be perfect as well. But I just think that he came in, he bought in. The work ethic, Kirby Smart just raved about his work ethic and the fact that he came in and just bought into what Georgia was trying to do. And if you see him, like he's listed at 5'10", the combine's going to tell us probably something different. He is not a big guy, but he's just out there. And even when the ball's not going to him, he's just blocking his tail off for other plays. So I just think that shows that even in this transfer portal era, you can get a guy to come in and just epitomize what Georgia football is all about, and you can get really elite wide receivers to come to Georgia.
Wanted to read this stat from Marcus Mosher, who is on the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Zachariah Branch is averaging 8.1 yards after yards after catch per reception for his college career. I'll say that again. Zachariah Branch is averaging 8.1 yards after catch per reception for his college career. There have been no wide receivers drafted in the first round over the last 3 seasons who have hit that number. And now some of that obviously is based off of what he did at USC, but he's been phenomenal for Georgia. And again, talk about Gunnar Stockton's success. It would not look like it has if he did not have Zachariah Branch. Ben, are you sticking with us? Are you going with Branch for transfer of the year?
Yeah, I mean, he's the transfer of the year for multiple reasons. He's the transfer of the year because he's had the biggest impact on this team. I also think that because of the status that he had and that he was coming from an entirely different portion of the country and he was coming from USC, which USC loses 2 of their best receivers last year and still ends up winning the Biletnikoff this year. So it's a known producer of receivers. And the fact that a guy went from there to Georgia, that is going to have ripple effects for transfer portal windows to come. Like this is not the last. I mean, not that Georgia hasn't had success in the portal with London Humphreys and Colby Young and Noah Thomas at wide receiver, but Zachariah Branch is going to have a star power and impact with future transfers that we're going to see in future windows. Like this is his impact goes beyond just this season, even though he's going to be a one and done type of guy. So yeah, he's the transfer of the year now. And we could be talking about Zachariah Branch's transfer of the year for like 3 or 4 years now. Every time Georgia gets a wide receiver of his status from somewhere completely different it changes the profile of receiver that Georgia is going to be able to get, in my opinion.
I was going to mention, Kipp talked about him being a fan favorite. I was talking to my 6-year-old nephew, and I was like, who's your favorite Georgia player? Zachariah Branch.
Yeah, of course.
It's hard to blame him. He's very fun to watch. All right, freshman of the year. Very interested in who you guys go with here. I'll start with you, Ben. Who is your freshman of the year for the Bulldogs?
Headlines from the last week notwithstanding, I am going with Mr. Dontrell Glover. I think that he shocked the world in terms of how quickly he got on the field, period. Not even talking about the amount that he got on the field, but the fact that he was on the field as a May enrollee, a 3-star interior offensive lineman from Atlanta, that nobody really knew where he was going to be. Is he a center? Is he a guard? Do we really know when he's going to have a path to the field? Well, his path to the field was right away. And I think that the second that Georgia got him into practices, they realized that they had a dude that was nasty. And Dontrell Glover is nasty. And I think that the fact that he has out-repped Juan Gaston this season really tells you all that you need to know about how Georgia feels about this guy, and just the meanness and toughness that he plays with as a true freshman. I mean, I had it pulled up earlier, so I don't have it exactly right, but I want to say he played like 500-something snaps this season. I mean, it was he was the starting guard, basically, in terms of how, when you look at snap counts, I mean, there weren't interior offensive linemen other than Micah Morris and Drew Bobo that were playing more than Dontrell Glover this season. And I just didn't see that one coming. I got to be honest with you. I just did not see me sitting here at the end of this season saying that Dontrell Glover was my freshman of the year.
I'm going with you also, Ben. I mean, Dontrell was so huge. And again, I mean, when we talk about mid-year enrollees, or summer enrollees, I should say, you know, you kind of just chalk up, all right, like you might see them on special teams some, you know, like just the different guys, but they're not going to play very much. They're not getting here until late. 2 years in a row now that we've been proven wrong, because Nate Frazier was a summer enrollee in 2024, and Dontrell has, you know, been so huge for this team. And you know, I think they would have been in okay shape if they had to run with Juan Gaston at right guard, but Dontrell has been fantastic, and the job he's done, his ability to get to the second level, just a very powerful blocker and a guy that goes out there with bad intentions. I think it's a great pick, and I'm sticking with going with you as well, going with Dontrell Glover. Kipp, do you also have Dontrell, or are you going with a different freshman of the year?
I mean, I considered Elijah Griffin for this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's kind of gets dinged a little bit because it's like, oh, he's a 5-star, you know, he's the best player. It's what we expected. I think playing on either line for Georgia as a true freshman is insane. Mm-hmm. And I also think Elijah Griffin, that game against Texas, like they couldn't block him. Like that was where you knew, like, there is a difference between these two programs at the line of scrimmage, and he is proving it right now. But, man, Dontrell Glover, my goodness. I just think that the fact that how many snaps he played as a freshman is insane. And I think it was like more than any other, I think Pro Football Focus said it was more than any other Power 4 true freshman on the offensive line. So I can't not give it to him. If you lead all true freshmen in power football in something, in snaps, I think you have to, you know, get that award, especially at Georgia. And honestly, the thing that shocked me the most about him is just how good he was in pass protection. Like the guy didn't allow a sack as a freshman at right guard. Like, I mean, you'd want that kind of production from like Tate Ratledge playing there, you know, like you can't ask for anything more. And the fact that he's a true freshman, I just think that was incredible from him. It's just another one of those, like, Georgia would you talk about Juan Gaston and how he may have done, but they needed both of them for a while, you know, when their guys were banged up. They had tackles banged up, you know, Ernest Green, Monroe Freeland, both banged up. You had to kind of rotate guys in there. I don't know where Georgia would be if like Dontrell Glover just doesn't come in as a, you know, summer enrollee and just say, yeah, I got this, guys. But either way, like now, you know, between him and Juan Gaston, you have this like incredible interior offensive line duo that you can run with moving forward. So he's the foundation of this offensive line, and I think a true success story for one of several Georgia assistants we thought we're going to be fired by now, right, guys? And Stacey Searles, it's like I haven't heard anyone talk about him really since the season started. Everyone's quiet now. And so if we're really talking about like just assistants, maybe Stacey Searles, like, I mean, he needs some props there because he just took unit that once again and gets banged up and goes out there and returns to Georgia football as far as offensive line playing. Got a true freshman out there playing amazing.
Most underappreciated dog. Who is the guy that is not getting enough credit, enough respect? I'd be very interested to see where you guys go, but I'll start this one and hand up. It's a guy that I have been very critical of. Cash Jones. This is a guy that just goes out there and does the dirty work, a lot of pass protection on third down. A lot of times he just does everything that the coaches want him to do. I think about Ben. I think it's the SEC title game. It's like 3rd and 17. Gunner throws to him. He comes up like a yard short, but like the guy just makes plays. We talked to the Alabama game to death when they ran him, but if the lineman that we were just talking about, if the freshman lineman, block it right, he's got a chance not only to get the first down, but to score. He's a guy that I know Georgia fans get frustrated seeing him on the field, but Kirby Smart would not put him out there if the guy was not a reliable guy. At one point during the season, Kirby talked about during fall camp, they kept up with who had forced the most broken tackles during fall camp, and Cash Jones was the guy. He's a guy, again, I can't sit here and say, well, you guys all, talk crap about him, because there are times where I'm like, why is Cash Jones in this game? But he's in there for a reason, and he also made a big tackle in the SEC title game on special teams. He was right there with Cole Spear, and I think Chase Linton also made a big tackle. They kind of helped gang tackle that guy. So I'm shouting out Cash Jones. I think that he is an underappreciated dog, and he deserves a junkie from us here on Dogs 24/7. All right, Ben, who is your underappreciated dog?
Did we skip special teams MVP?
We sure did. We'll get to that after this.
Well, no, it's perfect because the most underappreciated player on this team is Peyton Woodring. And I say that because I have this theory. I call it the red light theory. When you're driving, you always have that light. You feel like, I always get stopped at this red light. And you're like, why do I always get stopped at this red light? And the reality is you probably don't always get stopped at that red light. You just only feel that you're getting stopped at that red light when you're getting stopped at it. When it's green, you don't think about it. You're just driving through it and you're just going along with your day. That's Peyton Woodring, because the red light theory applies to kickers. You only realize it when they are missing the kicks. And because he does not miss the kicks, you do not understand the magnitude of some of the kicks that he has. But there were times in the Tennessee game, the Florida game, he did have the miss in the Auburn game when they were down, but he did have another one later on where Georgia's trailing in these games. In some cases, they're down 2 scores. In the Ole Miss game, he has a big one where you're down, and if he doesn't make that field goal, you probably don't win that game. And because he makes it, and it's like, oh, it's just a routine 43-yarder for Peyton Woodring, because when he's inside 50, it's pretty much money. And, well, this season, I think he's had one miss in like 40 to 49, and he's made every other kick that he's had. And so, like, he's pretty much money no matter where it is that he is. And because of that, you just say, all right, you got your 3, and you move along. You probably complain that Mike Bobo had a drive stall out and that Georgia wasn't able to do something offensively. And you don't think about the fact that you just had a kicker make a 45-yard field goal look routine. And then all of a sudden you have chances late in these games to be able to win, where if Peyton Woodring doesn't make those field goals earlier in the game, you do not have those opportunities to make it. And when you look at the Tennessee game this year, where you have an opponent that would have beaten Georgia if they just had a field goal kicker make a field goal, you take it for granted. I think people take Peyton Woodring for granted to the point that Jordan didn't even remember to do the special teams MVP category in the order that we were planning to, even though, little spoiler alert, I wasn't even planning on making him the special teams MVP, only further reinforcing how underappreciated Peyton Woodring is.
It's all part of the plan here, Ben. We just want to keep everybody on their toes. Kipp, who is your most underappreciated dog?
That was incredible. I have to completely change everything now, and honestly, I have to agree with Ben, and it's just like crushing me right now. Like, I just deleted somebody from the awards, walking up to the podium, because I think overall that's how Georgia fans are now. They don't even pay attention to who the kicker is at Georgia anymore. That just says a lot to what Georgia's been able to do. Like we watch people tweet about, or I guess post about college kickers every week, and it's just you watch games decided by, and you just know that like this guy might miss it, and or if it's like an inexperienced guy, it's like, oh gosh, it's always this like dramatic moment, and I can't even tell you when there's ever really been that moment for Peyton Woodring. And I'm going to talk about him again a little later with one of our other awards, not the special teams award, but I mean, he's so underappreciated that, you know, even his own coach doesn't bring him out there when maybe he should. So I agree with Ben. I think I am not going to give him my special teams award as well. And I think that should be like kind of the consensus, because we need to lock in on how underappreciated Peyton Woodring is. And, you know, maybe that stokes a fire under him and Kirby Smart moving forward.
I did want to take the chance. I'm sure that there's some guys that y'all have considered for some other awards, and then we didn't end up doing them. And I feel like the underappreciated dog categories and honorable mentions is a good opportunity to do that, because I do think there are some solid honorable mentions. Like, y'all fire off anybody that comes to mind for you, but I mean, a few that come to mind for me. One, Monroe Freeling. I mean, he's the only player on Georgia other than Gunnar Stockton that's played over 800 snaps this season. And when we talk about the offensive line and all the changes in the rotations and variations, it's like he's kind of been that constant this season that has been reliable for Georgia, and people aren't talking about him. And I think that that's just a testament to how strongly he's played. I think that Quintavious Johnson is someone that has gone wildly underappreciated, probably because he's come along so much during the course of the season. And so he's not, you know, fully appreciated right now. A guy that the fact that we're this deep into it and what he's done during his career and how he's taken over games, like Dalen Everett has kind of become this corner that we just like, he doesn't get talked about like Kamari Lassiter and DeAndre Baker did. And I'm not saying that he necessarily should in terms of what he's done or what opponent completion percentages have been against him or whatever, but like, he just makes plays, and he's had game-changing plays all throughout his career. Last year, he obviously does it again in the SEC championship game on what, again, another situation, sort of like the Peyton Woodring conversation. Like when Dalen Everett makes that pick, it makes it look so easy. It's not an easy play. It's deflected. He's moving the other direction. He has to change where his eyes are in terms of where the ball was going to be floating toward for him to make that play, and not even just make that play, turn it into a big return, even though it ends up getting called back. Like, he's a special player. So there's definitely, and I'm sure you all have some more, but like there are a bunch of guys on this team that I feel like have gone underappreciated throughout this season.
I'll just say with Monroe Freeling, he's a guy I considered for offensive breakthrough player because of how he played. And think about what the situation was for him last year in New Orleans. I mean, I guess I should say back in January, he struggled. And he gave up the pressure that led to a sack that kind of got the ball rolling in Notre Dame's direction. I really considered Michael Morris. I think he's a guy that's just, he's steady, man. And, you know, when they've had other guys get hurt, I'm pretty sure Micah at this point has started every single game. And, you know, he was playing with a club on his hand to start the year. He's done a great job. Glad you shouted out Quintavious Johnson. I would throw out there Christian Miller. His numbers aren't gaudy, but he's just been steady. And he was a guy, it felt like there was a little stretch there where, like, once a game he went down, was kind of slow to get up, but like just go to the sideline, get himself back in order, and get back out there. So that's who I would shout out as sort of the honorable mentions for this award. Kipp, you got any you want to include?
I love all those guys. And with Monroe Freeling, like the one game he didn't start was that the Auburn game where like they go with like for 1 or 2 series. Like how many series was it where they ran out Bo Hughley out there where they're like, Monroe. Like, I mean, like, and he was like, no one thought he was going to play. Like, I think he was like our injury reports were basically like, he's not going to play. And they saw what it looked like with him out there for a couple of series. And they're just like, card him out there. Like, he's out there basically playing, you know, on a knee card at that point. So love that pick. Quintavious Johnson, Christian Miller, great picks. Like Gabe Harris, talking about guys who just started every game this season. And, I mean, just out there setting the edge and improving as a pass rusher as the season goes on, but outstanding against the run. Like Georgia's not where they are in run defense if he's not out there just taking on blocks, shedding blocks at the line of scrimmage, and making sure those guys don't have outlets. So love all those picks overall.
I guess I'll just throw out just people that have made such game-changing plays this season, and we haven't mentioned them once throughout the course of this episode. Raylan Wilson, like the fact that CJ goes out and you don't really miss him too much of a beat. He's been great this season. London Humphreys obviously makes big plays. I think that his block that freed up Nate Frazier in the SEC championship game is probably one of the more underappreciated moments or things that a player has done on a play this season. And then I feel like there was one other that I wanted to call out that Dylan Bell. Like, this is a guy that I think people were like, I think in the Austin P game, we're like, why is he such a feature part of this offense? And now it's like, oh yeah, it's because he can singularly change games in the SEC championship game against Alabama. We don't talk about Dylan Bell enough. I think this is the first time we've mentioned his name an hour into this show, and he made some of the biggest plays in the SEC championship game.
Wanted to shout out, and this will help with the transition, Bo Gardner, the Patrick Manley Award winner at long snapper. He's one of two Bulldogs who got individual national awards, the other being Brett Thorson winning the Ray Guy Award. And then Kirk Benedict, the special teams coach, just the job that he's done throughout the year. And think about some of the big plays of this season, the onside kick against Texas to really get the ball rolling. We talked about the success they've had on special teams. Shout out to Kirk Benedict. So to go and take that into the special teams MVP, since I so rudely skipped that earlier. Ben, you fought for it. You get to give it first. Who's the special teams MVP for Georgia?
Well, I'm going to obviously there's a hypocrisy to everything that I just said about Peyton Woodring, and then I'm not going to select him to be the special teams MVP, and I fully acknowledge that. But I'm going to mention another guy that is underappreciated, and I don't know if it's the same as you or not, Kipp. I see you're nodding your head. I don't know if this is the direction you're going. But I think he made the single biggest special teams play of the entire season, and that was Cole Speer. And I know it might be one play, and it might not have been – and it's not the only play that he made in special teams. Let's be very clear. He's made more plays than that during the course of his special teams career in this season. I'm not saying Georgia doesn't win that game against Alabama. Georgia completely controls the game against Alabama from start to finish. Do I think that the game looks like that if Cole Speer doesn't make that play in that moment that early in the football game? No, I do not. And so for that reason, the guy that has been a special teams lifer at Georgia, that has gone underappreciated at Georgia, he steps up in the SEC championship game against a team that Georgia is proclaimed to never be able to beat, and he makes a play early enough in that game that it flipped the game on its head from that moment forward. And I think that play alone warrants him being the special teams MVP for the season.
Kipp, who are you going with for special teams MVP?
I love it. I do plan to mention Cole Speer on this show. And I mean, like on the post-game show after the SC championship, I mean, I could gush. The only person who can gush about Cole Speer longer than me is the one who did after that game. That's Kirby Smart. I got to go with Bo Gardner. Yeah. I mean, like, I considered him for the transfer portal win because, I mean, he won the award for the best at his position in the country. And who's the only person on special teams that makes sure, like, I mean, we're talking about Peyton Woodring, and we're talking about, the Ray Guy. Like, we're talking about the best punter in the country, and Brett Thorson. Those guys wouldn't be where they were if Bo Gardner was out there just making sure snaps were never an issue. And I think we actually saw this season, like, snaps can be an issue. And when that was like the biggest question mark going in the SC championship game. And you know what? I got quieted by Malachi Tolliver real quick on there. Sorry for doubting you. If we're just going to continue talking about underappreciated guys, the man came in there and we all counted him out. We all picked Alabama to win. We're like, well, they lost Drew Bobo, and he went out there and just snapped like a champ. But I mean, Bo Gardner probably showed him how it's done. Like, he's just like, here, this is how you do it. And I think the outstanding for him, a guy that, I mean, we never mentioned him during the season, but here we are. Like, he just won the award for the best long snapper, and like, Georgia's special teams is ridiculous. Like, that's I looking at all the teams in the college football playoffs, I'm like, yeah, Georgia's consistently the best in special teams. So this is like probably the most competitive award of the show. So I knew that, like, this is Bo Gardner's best chance to get an award, and I think he earned it.
I'm going to go with Peyton Woodring, 15 to 16 on field goals. He's never missed an extra point. He's had some kickoffs that went out of bounds, had some issues, but I think specifically going into this playoff, I don't think there's ever going to be a point where Kirby's like, oh, I don't know if I feel great about putting Peyton Woodring out there. And Kipp mentioned this earlier. The thing with Peyton being so consistent, there are times they go for it on fourth down where we're like, why are you doing this? You have 3 points waiting there in Peyton Woodring. He's been fantastic. I just don't. There's been some other big-time performances on special teams, but I got to go with Peyton Woodring.
3 different people for the special teams MVP award, none of them being the Ray Guy award winner.
Says all you need to know about the special teams.
Yeah, shout out Kirk Benedict. We shouted out Mike Bobo. We shouted out Stacey Searles for assistant coaches. Shout out Kirk Benedict. Talk about underappreciated Kirk Benedict.
Yeah, I made sure to mention him. So he's done a great job for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, and go through a couple more awards, and then look ahead a little bit to the postseason. All right, guys, this is one that I'm really interested to see where you guys go with it. Most complete game for Georgia this year. I'll start with you, Ben. What do you feel like was the most complete game Georgia has played to this point?
I was torn on this. I was actually hoping that I wasn't going to go first here so that I could hear some thoughts from you all that might influence me. Here's what I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the Alabama SEC championship game, and I'm just going to make it easy. When you look offensively, statistically, it was not Georgia's perfect offensive game statistically. They didn't have too many sustained drives. Their 4 touchdown drives came off of block punt for Alabama going forward at 4th deep in their own territory, the interception from Dalen Everett, and then Zachariah Branch returning a punt close to Alabama territory. So they didn't have to move the football a ton in that game, which is why I hesitate to say it was the most complete game. But when you factor in its ability to affect field position in special teams, its ability to change the game on its head with Cole Speer blocking the punt in special teams, when you look at the defense basically not giving up a touchdown until the 30 yards of penalties and the fluky deflected catch across the middle of the field by the tight end, like until that drive happens, the defense was basically as flawless in an SEC championship game against Alabama as you could be. And the fact that offensively, even though yardage wise it wasn't dominant, they capitalized offensively in every single moment that they had an opportunity to. I'm just going to go easy and say when you beat Alabama in the SEC championship game the way that they did, it's the most complete. But there are some other games that have cases. I'm not going to say that there aren't.
Kipp, you were shaking your head there. What is your pick for the most complete game for Georgia?
I'm not going to not pick a game where Alabama had -3 rushing yards.
Yeah,
like we could try to look at the Texas game and know that, after Noah Thomas catches that touchdown towards the end of the first quarter, they never trailed. And it was a dominant performance for sure. They did really well overall in all facets of the game. But when you're trying to compare and break things down, Gunner still threw a pick. And I think penalties were kind of break even in both games. They were penalized a lot. That kind of kept both games from just being complete blowouts. But also, we said in the post game and then just thinking about this Alabama game after a couple of days later, you could just tell that Kirby Smart knew this game was he had the advantage. And after losing, avenging your only loss of the season, and then just knowing most of the game and kind of calling the game that way, that this game is won. I think that just checks enough of the boxes to where, offensively, not the biggest performance, but I'm sorry, that's just Kirby Smart. He wants to get the game over with. He's not going to give you guys what you want. He's going to go let his defense go out there and just, crush crush the opponent's will. And then the offense kind of does the same thing, just slow and methodical. Let's run this clock out because he's thinking about the bigger picture. He's thinking about the fact that there are games after this. And he knew when this game was won. And it was the earliest in a game, really, that Kirby Smart knew the game was won. And it was against Alabama. So I just don't know how you pick any other game.
I'm going with that game too. I was in between the Kentucky game where Georgia actually got a stop early in the game, and they scored, I think, touchdowns on the first 2 drives. The Mississippi State game.
Yeah, Mississippi State I was thinking heavily as well.
The fact they gave up a touchdown to open that game, I was sort of like, because it was like, well, here we go again, and then they shut them down. But it's hard to argue with the SEC title game. The offense being opportunistic, scoring those touchdowns pretty much after huge swings in momentum with the block punt, with Dalen Everett's interception, and then, a turnover on downs. They took advantage of that on a short field and also scored after that. The defense, again, stopping Alabama's run game, holding them to negative yards. That was the first time since the 1968 Gator Bowl that Alabama had been held to negative rushing yards. And then the special teams. Blocking that punt, that fully gave Georgia the momentum, and Alabama was able to fight back some and kind of made it interesting in that fourth quarter for a minute. But a fantastic game for Georgia. It's hard to argue with that one. All right, play of the year. Kipp, I'll start with you. What do you feel like has been the play of the year for the Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, this is where I refer to what Ben talked about on special teams. It's the Cole Spear block punt.
Oh.
It just, for me, it's like Georgia goes into this game. They're like, oh, God, it's Alabama again. Like, are we going to have to worry about whether or not, we make the college football playoff? We're in, right? Even when we lose. In the end, even if we lose scenario, said everything about just, again, Alabama's had that kind of success against Georgia. But when that play happened in that game and we're all up in the press box, it's like you could just tell in Mercedes-Benz, it's like, all right, the momentum's a little bit different in this game. And it never changed from that moment. Like, that was guys, we're not afraid of these guys. Like, Cole Spear just blocked a freaking punt. And yeah, that was the moment where it's like, all right, like, this Georgia team is no longer afraid of this Crimson Tide team. It's just football. And this is one of the best teams in the country. And like I said, the fact that it happened from Cole Spear, a guy that's probably not going to make another catch for Georgia before his time is done, may make another big special teams play, but just went out there and was like, I'm not afraid of these guys. And everyone on the sideline saw that and they're like, yeah, what are we worried about here? We're the better football team. And that was just the big mentality tone setter for Georgia heading into the postseason.
Kalen DeBoer talked about after the game that LT Overton had been the personal protector for Alabama punting this year. LT did not play in that game. They had a new guy there, and they did not check into a protection, which Cole Spear took advantage of. Ben, you seemed a little bit surprised by Kipp's pick. Where are you going with play of the year?
Well, no, it's a good pick. I'm debating between 2 choices, and I think it's really hard. And it wasn't that, and it's really hard for me because I think that the season would have looked entirely differently if either of those 2 plays didn't happen. But I'm going to go back to the very beginning, before Georgia suffered its first loss of the season, and Georgia faces a 4th and 6th in Neyland Stadium. The season looked like it was going to be on serious ice at that point. It was going to be ugly. Like, you got Alabama coming up in 2 weeks. You've got this SEC schedule where you don't even totally know what it's going to look like. You don't necessarily know whether Florida is going to be a full version of itself or Auburn's going to be a full version of itself. And Texas hasn't necessarily face planted to the point that it had yet in the season. So it was like, if you don't convert that 4th and 6, like, I don't know what, like, we could be looking at a 9-3 Georgia right now. Like, we could be looking, I'm not saying it would have happened. We could be looking at an 8-4 Georgia. Now, on the flip side of it, we could be looking at an 11-1 Georgia, and Georgia just beats Alabama the first time and then runs the table. I'm not saying that couldn't have happened either. But that moment changed the way that I think we can look at the season now. What's interesting is the other play that I had in my mind. I'll be interested to see if you mention it, if you choose it or not, Jordan. But if you don't choose it, we'll bring it up because that one, in some ways, might have been more important just in terms of what happened before it. But yeah, I'll go with 4th and 6 in Neyland.
So I'll just see if you are reading my mind. Are you talking about C.J. Allen's forced fumble against Auburn? Is that the
Yes,
play?
I am.
That is my pick. It's one I went back and forth with the London Humphreys catch because that was a big play not only for Georgia but to show us what Gunnar Stockton's able to do with time to kind of think about it more because I think I might have picked that when we did this in the midseason. I mean, Tennessee still should have won that game.
Yeah.
I mean, Tennessee drove down the field to kick the game-winning field goal and just missed the field goal. But Georgia in real trouble against Auburn. Auburn's got all the momentum. They're on the 1-inch line trying to score to make it, 17-0, I think it would have been, with a touchdown and a PAT. C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson forced a fumble, and Georgia's got new life. And you could just tell, even by listening to Hugh Freeze at halftime, that they were like, basically, we've missed our opportunity. Like, we had Georgia on the ropes, and this freaking C.J. Allen, forces a fumble and gives Georgia a new life. So I think, to me, that's the play of the year because, at that point, am I remembering right, they'd already lost to Alabama at that point. So you're talking about 2 losses, and you're talking about, you don't have a lot of margin for error when it comes to trying to make the playoff and especially trying to make the SEC title game. So I think that play just, it swung the game in Georgia's favor. And, I mean, from then on, it felt like it was all Georgia. Got to give C.J. Allen a lot of credit. And they always say they're not in until they're in. That's what they talk about with the end zone. They're not just going to give up a touchdown because you're close. What a great example of that and just how big that was for the Bulldogs. And a huge road win where it looked pretty bad early on.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other one that I was thinking about, obviously. And what I was going, if you think about, you'd already lost to Bama. So if you lose that Auburn game, it's done. Whereas in the Tennessee one, you lose the Tennessee game, you could have still gone 11-1. The one thing I do go back to is if Georgia doesn't convert the 4th and 6 in Neyland, they lose that game. 100% chance there was no way that they were going to win that game. It would have been unlikely if Alabama goes up 17-0 or if Auburn goes up 17-0, but Georgia did still score 17 second half points. Georgia did still have a whole half of football, and based on what we've seen this season with them down double digits in second halves, they still would have had an opportunity to try and find a way. But where I think it maybe was more meaningful was Georgia's a 2-loss team at that point if they don't win that game, and that play is the reason why they were able to win that game.
One play do-over. I think we'll have a consensus here, but I'll be interested. It's the Cash Jones 4th down run against Alabama for me. It was just so short-sighted that they were trying to catch Alabama off guard. I'll say this, going back, Ben did a good job of breaking down the play when we talked about it, where it's there, but you're running the ball on the side with 2 true freshmen. It's not blocked correctly. Cash Jones gets tripped up, and they miss out on their best opportunity to at least tie the game, and they lose by 3, which Peyton Woodring would have given you. Ben, do you have a different one-play do-over? Where are you going here?
No, I mean, I still would have gone for it. I wouldn't do over the decision to go for it. I know that some people would say kick the field goal there, tie it up. What we've seen now with Georgia and Alabama, Georgia could have found a way to win. I would have still gone for it. You had to get less than a yard, right around a yard. It was there. Personnel differences, maybe quick snap differences. I do think Georgia's got to give up the quick snap thing. They did one of those. I think I want to say it was the 4th down against Georgia Tech. I want to say it was where they quick snapped it. And it's I get it. It advanced. They got the 1st down. It's just the quick snap thing hasn't worked this year. So yeah, I would probably, if I could do over anything, I would do over the quick snap. I know a lot of people would say they'd do over Cash Jones being in that spot. I think Cash Jones can get a yard. I do believe in Cash Jones to be able to get a yard. I do believe in, a little bit blocking better up front, but I think the quick snap led to just kind of what ended up happening on that play. And as you mentioned, it was LT Overton that actually makes that stop.
Kipp, where are you going with the one-play do-over this year?
Take the freaking points, man. You got Peyton Woodring back there. The reason why the do-over shouldn't be going for it is because you still got inexperienced players in your offensive front. And it's like Kirby he's being such a hypocrite here because he always talks about like you have to see it in practice. You have to know these guys can do it in practice. And I just think you're throwing out guys at that point in the season that are still learning. And like they can't pick everything up. You're asking them to do a lot in that situation when you got a kicker that's like you didn't utilize enough because I mean, if you want to tell me that the numbers say that like the three isn't worth giving them the ball again, okay. Like I understand that. But Peyton going up there, it's an automatic three. You extend the football game. You give yourself more opportunities to be the better football team. And you didn't give your team that because you put guys out there in a situation they haven't practiced enough clearly, and at least against this Alabama team, and they missed their assignment and left Cash Jones out there to draw it. So I think I trust that Cash can make a play. He gets a bad rap for that. He gets put in crazy situations and almost gets it done almost every time. Peyton Ruben gets it done every time. Go with him next time. Like in that situation now, I would agree with Ben. Like I would probably handle it differently now because now you got guys who actually have played a lot of football. It's a completely different football team. It was too early in the season to put that much on those younger players, and Kirby's never going to tell you that. But if you ask him the opposite way, maybe you'll get the contrarian answer, and he'll admit it. Like I shouldn't have put him out there that early in that situation.
Yeah, are you glad? Are you glad that you did that early in the season so that you could see them like struggle? And it's like, well, no, I was actually pissed because we didn't get the 1 yard.
That's true. You guys have listened to Kirby Smart a time or two. I did want to say this with, the decision I kind of came to, the conclusion I came to with that play. I think they should have tried to get him to jump off sides, call timeout, and then go for it. So like kind of striking the middle. But, your defense was playing really well, so I can understand also just taking the points. But I think you at least try to get them to jump off sides before you do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the trickiness, they'd already used a timeout, if I'm not mistaken, at that point, I think. So they would have been – I think they would have one timeout left if they do that in that spot, which didn't end up mattering because they didn't get the stop anyway. But
no, it's a fair point. All right, most intriguing dog for you in the playoff. Who's the one guy that you're kind of focused in on and saying, I'm paying attention to him and what he does as Georgia tries to make a run? I'll start with you, Kipp. Who is the dog you are really going to be following probably the closest in this playoff run?
Probably the player who's been thinking about how the last season ended more than anybody else. That's Gunnar Stockton. How he came out there and, it was a tough situation. There was a lot going on for Georgia, for Kirby Smart that week, a crazy situation runs, and he goes out there and just, does not have his best performance, and all offseason is a question mark for Georgia football. But now, looking at the different quarterbacks and matchups in the postseason, I think he's like one of the biggest X factors, and that's why I laughing at the ESPN most important players where Gunnar Stockton came in, like it's like 22nd. And I'm like, nah, if Gunnar Stockton goes out there and, I guess plays like he did against Ole Miss the first time, but let's assume Georgia's playing Ole Miss in the quarterfinal. Like he went out there and led one of the like best fourth quarter comebacks we've seen this century. Like it was incredible. Like you remember he went 12 for 12. In the fourth quarter, and they were down 9 at the time, and led them to that comeback, one of his several fourth quarter comebacks this season. He's able to do that because he goes out there and throws for 4 touchdowns, no picks, almost 300 yards, and runs for 50 yards. If he does that in the college football playoff, then we're talking again like Georgia quarterback lore of like winning college football playoff MVPs, stacking those, getting up like a Stetson Bennett type run. I think he's the player of all the guys in the postseason who's like capable of that kind of run, of just stepping up his play in this moment and hitting a level that few other quarterbacks in college football can hit.
Whether it's fair or not, the perception is going to be that this Georgia team will go as far as Gunnar Stockton can take it. And that's why I'm also picking Gunnar Stockton. It's an obvious answer. And we can talk about honorable mentions in a few minutes for all the awards we've talked about, because there's a few that I'm really intrigued by. But Gunnar's play is going to be scrutinized from every handoff to every throw he makes in this postseason. You hope that the last few weeks will have done him some good as far as getting closer to 100%, because he's been beat up. But the dude lays it all out there on the line, and they're counting on him to extend drives, put Georgia in position to score points, and try to capture the third national title of the Kirby Smart era. Ben, are you going with Gunnar, or do you have a different choice for the Bulldog you're most interested in watching?
No, I'm not going with Gunnar. I wasn't even considering Gunnar for this, which is making me think, what am I looking at this properly? I'm going to go with the guy that I would have brought up for the SEC championship game as well, and that's Malachi Tolliver. I mean, I believe that he will be the center for Georgia during this playoff run. I know that there were questions in the room and out in the building and outside of the building whether he was going to be a serviceable replacement for Drew Bobo. I know that he certainly in that SEC championship game was a serviceable replacement for Drew Bobo, but that does not entitle you to being a serviceable replacement for Drew Bobo for these next 3 games that you have to win to be able to win a national championship. And so I think that, sort of like what Jordan just says, fair or not, like I do think in some ways Georgia goes as Malachi Tolliver goes. If he's snapping the ball consistently, if the offensive line doesn't look like it's changed a whole lot with him as that centerpiece of the offensive line, then I think Georgia's offense is going to be just fine. If he starts running into some snap issues, if he starts getting bullied a little bit, I mean, now teams have had a game and a half of film of him to be able to say, what does he do well? Where have teams been able to take advantage of him? Where does he struggle? You know, there's going to be a little bit more sample size for teams as the playoff goes on in terms of how you actually attack a guy like that at center. So that's what I'm going to be watching. I was debating between a few other guys, but not Gunnar Stockton, but Malachi Tolliver will be my choice.
Shout out who else you were kind of considering.
Well, 2 of them are not guys that I know for sure are even going to play for Georgia during this playoff run, but Colby Young and Ethan Barbour are doing everything that they can to try and come back, and I never would have expected that either of them would have been in even having an opportunity to be playing. Do I think that they'll be available for the Sugar Bowl? Probably not. Do I think that if Georgia wins the Sugar Bowl, it starts becoming an interesting conversation with both of them? Yes, and if Georgia's able to get Colby Young back at any point during the playoff, or Ethan Barbour, and he is anything resembling what he was looking like he was going to be early in the season, he would change the way that Georgia would be able to do personnel groupings on offense. And we know that Mike Bobo has felt like he's had this endless bag of tricks throughout the season. Adding Ethan Barbour back into the rotation this late in the season would give him an entirely new bag of tricks that he'd be able to dip into, I think, from a 13 personnel standpoint.
I was really considering Ellis Robinson just because we've talked about how he's played, and he's going to be tested, especially if we're looking at a semifinal where Georgia's playing Jeremiah Smith and the Ohio State Buckeyes, and Gabe Harris too. You know, we're recording this, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit earlier from when you are hearing it, about a week earlier, and we had reported Gabe Harris is dealing with a little bit of turf toe. I need to see Georgia be able to rush the passer, so they need Gabe to be as healthy as he can be and be able to contribute once we get out there. Kipp, anyone else you wanted to shout out just with this award?
Yeah, I mean, I think the X factor of Georgia's offense has been Zachariah Branch, you know, the entire season. And I think, you know, how they utilize them. Is this where, you know, is Bobo hitting him at the line of scrimmage every single game? Is he getting any downfield balls? Like, how do you get him the ball and let him, you know, get an explosive or two? I think, you know, if Georgia's offense is struggling to run the football traditionally, like, it's going to be even more put on his back. So this is kind of the, like, stock game for him. Like, he could come out of this. If you're talking about guys who could come out of this as like first round locks, like, this is a Zachariah Branch prove yourself set where he could just go out there, be the most explosive player in this playoff. And going back to my previous ESPN article, like, he's the number 7 wide receiver according to them. They don't think he's one of the top 5 wide receiver playmakers in the playoffs. Go out there and have a couple 100-yard performances leading Georgia to a national championship game. And I think, they'll have to recount some of their statements and say, yeah, we got that one wrong.
All right, the last one of these guys, the playoff matchup you'd most like to see for Georgia. This is just the team that's in the playoff that you'd really like to see. It might not be one that could happen outside of like the national title, but you would, if you had your choice, you'd really like to see these two teams, Georgia, play this team in the playoff. Ben, who would be your pick for the playoff matchup with Georgia you'd most like to see?
I mean, I don't know. It would be an ugly week. There would be a lot of debate if Georgia were to lose the game. There would be some real reflection that would go on that would not be fun for us to be a part of. But Gunnar Stockton versus Carson Beck. I mean, how anything other than Georgia versus Miami in the semifinals, like that is box office stuff right there. Like that is why, if there was any other reason why the committee felt that they should squeeze Miami into that final spot in that half of the bracket, that was a pretty good reason why. I don't think it's out of the question. I really don't. Like, I know Miami's they're gonna be underdogs at Texas A&M this weekend. Well, I guess, are people listening to this after that game?
Yes.
Shit. All right. Well, let's hope Miami wins that game so I don't sound like an idiot then, huh?
Well, hey, I'll make you feel better. And again, it's a matchup that maybe we don't wind up seeing, but I'm picking that one too. I mean, you can't turn down the former quarterback playing, the new quarterback and just all that entails with that. And then again, it goes back to me mentioning Ellis Robinson a few minutes ago. Georgia trying to slow down Malachi Toney. Man, like that dude is unreal. There's more to it than just the Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton. But that's a big piece of it. It would be fun. And even just, I'd like to see Miami and Georgia play just like in the idea of these two big teams, not necessarily the 2025 version of both teams. Getting Miami and Georgia together, I think that would be fun. Maybe Mark Rick could show up for it. That'd be fun to see. Kipp, what's the matchup with Georgia you most want to see?
You talking about Ben Watson's head coach?
Yeah, Ben Watson's head coach, yeah.
Let's not talk about any hints or tips he got from that coach, or maybe hopefully some other coach. But yeah, I don't want to risk all of our matchups just not even being like possible after the weekend. But I think the best matchups for Georgia are the guys that are playing in the first round. I mean, they never played Indiana. Texas Tech would just be too like elite pass rush, transfer portal. Ohio State was one of the best playoff games, we've ever seen when they played against Georgia. Oregon would be great just to see another Dan Lanning matchup. I think for me, the best non-championship game Georgia fans have experienced was the last time they played Oklahoma. And so I think that one would be a really interesting national championship game, because that Rose Bowl was that was memorable. Like that was just a crazy Baker Mayfield throws for 530 yards. Kirby Smart's defense is just getting shredded. And then Georgia still won because Nick Chubb and Sony Michel went out there and averaged like 13, 14 yards a carry. That game was one of the best ones. So if you had any chance of recreating that kind of matchup, I think that would just be the most entertaining national championship, because that's the only way they can meet possible for me. So in this specific bracket, not listening to the fact that we could have any teams playing, I think seeing Georgia play Oklahoma national championship would just give me the most potential for another fun game.
All right, before we wrap this up, any honorable mentions? We did a pretty good job of throwing them out as we went. But Ben, anyone else you want to shout out? Any other moments?
No, I mean, I felt like I really wanted to get those. Anybody that I considered throughout, I wanted to get in that underappreciated dog category, because I feel like if you're in consideration for the MVP, well, like Monroe Freeling, I know you mentioned him for breakthrough offensive player. Like I was considering him for offensive MVP, because when you're that guy at tackle and you play as many snaps, and like Kipp said, you come back and play a game that you maybe lose if you don't come back and play when everyone thought that you were injured. Like, there's a strong case for him, and the fact that I'm not choosing him for that makes me feel like he warrants being in that underappreciated dog conversation. So I feel like we did a pretty good job during that portion of highlighting the guys. But I'll say this is a special football team. Like, we're just sort of like tying the bow on this, like everything, the awards and everything. Every person listening to this, every person talking on this had doubts about this Georgia football team, and probably not just a single doubt. Like, there were doubts about what it was going to get from the quarterback position. There were doubts in the middle of the season whether this defense was going to be able to get big time stops against the lead offenses. Like, there were questions and doubts about this team the whole time. And this is an 12-1 SEC champion that beat every single team on its schedule this season. It's just a special football team. And like, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, because Kirby Smart teams, like I said at the beginning, they're inevitable at this point. I should no longer be able to be surprised, but some way, somehow, this team has found a way to surprise me in terms of what it's capable of. And like, I don't want to disrespect them by saying that I feel like they've overachieved already this season, but I do feel like they've already overachieved this season. And look, nobody's going to feel that they overachieved if they don't win these next 3 games, but this team has something special about it. And quite frankly, it's going to look a lot similar next season. It's going to be a team that is going to be very familiar to you when they suit up in 2026.
The thing you said there, Ben, that I'd agree with, obviously they want to go into the Sugar Bowl and win and advance, even past going and winning 3 games. But I think at this point in the season's been a success to win the SEC, to go 11-1. I think that is worth being proud of, even if you don't wind up even making a run to the semifinals. I want to shout out a guy we have not mentioned. At least I don't remember any of us saying his name. Oscar Delp.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy. His stats aren't outrageous, but just very consistent as a blocker, plays such a big role, and just, yeah, I think he's somebody worth shouting. I want to say, too, Josh McCray, not quite transfer of the year, but big on 4th downs, been very reliable. I think you'll see a good bit of him. And another dog that I'll say, like, just keep an eye on, they like throwing to Elias Williams, man. Maybe they try to get Elias Williams involved in this playoff.
I don't think anybody said KJ Bolden's name either, which that's probably something that should have been said by the end of this, just because he was the one sure thing in the secondary all season long. I guess Dalen Everett was as well, but he was the one sure thing in the secondary all season long. I don't think you're ever asking any questions about KJ Bolden.
Great call, because he's a guy that we just take for granted because nothing bad seems to happen when the ball comes his way. So I'm glad you said KJ Bolden's name. Kipp, anybody else you want to shout out?
I want to mention, again, Peyton Woodring not getting an award for me is I'm trying to motivate him. Like, he's got a chance. Kickers don't usually leave early for the draft. There are a lot of these guys, like you mentioned, Monroe Freeling, like, we don't know which way it's going to go. And the college football playoff, like, they could improve their stock and they could change their mind. But Peyton, when you're watching and listening to the show, and I know you will be, I didn't list you because you're the only way you're going to, break the PAT record set by Rodrigo Blankenship, the SC record, which I think is 200, is by coming back. I'm sorry, I don't think you'll get like 30, what is he, like 32 away or whatever right now. I don't think you're going to have that many opportunities in the college football playoff. So, that's where you got to come back. And then field goals, I think, if you want to crack the top 5 there, it's really competitive at Georgia. The guys made 57, outstanding 3 years, but that doesn't even get you in the top 5 right now. You're not even in the top 7. So if you want to just rack up the awards on next year's Junkies, you got to come back for that. But this is your last run. It's probably good for Georgia fans because it means you probably made some big kicks in this playoff run. And now everyone's like, oh, like Peyton Woodring, he's the best kicker in college football, and he's going to get drafted. So I think it's a win-win for Georgia fans. But either way, Peyton, prove me wrong. Get yourself a junkie next year. But either way, like, what an incredible run he's had at Georgia, and being as automatic as they come.
Yeah, Peyton, come back, and maybe in 2026 we'll actually have some hardware for these awards. Don't hold me to that.
Jordan, I also got to say, I don't know if you came up with Junkies before the show or if you came up with that on the fly when we were throwing out ideas. That's an unbelievable name for the postseason awards.
Yeah, it's the only thing that made sense, and like most things, I just came up with it and decided to run with it.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, we'll end the episode there. Thanks to Kipp and Ben, as always, for hopping on, and thanks again for their work throughout this football season, and we still got a ways to go. Thanks to everyone who watched this and who listened to this. Be sure to subscribe to Dogs 24/7. Subscribe to the Junkyard Dawgcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube, Dogs 24/7, the TikTok. A lot of good content there. Finishing off 2025 strong and diving headfirst into 2026. We're excited about it. We hope you guys will follow along with us on the Junkyard. So thanks to everyone who checked out this episode. Safe travels during this very busy holiday season. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. And until next time, take care, everybody.